Good morning, Master. Well, my name is Albany State from Business Services, and I welcome you all to the International Fraud Awareness Panel presentation today, taking place on our beautiful campus, Albany State University. This is at the request of our Chancellor. It's a statewide initiative by the Chancellor, Chancellor Albany, and I welcome you on his behalf and on behalf of our interim president, Dr. Albany, to this celebration of the spirit of USG. Spirit representing stewardship, prevention, integrity, inspiration, and trust. I'm acting today on behalf of our Director of Internal Service, or Internal Audit, Ms. Catherine Luster, who is also in Atlanta as I speak, for this same occasion. Like I noted earlier, it's a statewide program. I also want to recognize at this point members of the Select Committee here on Albany State. Some of them are here with us this morning. Some actually with the panel that we're presenting to you this morning. Please excuse me if I miss your name. You know how you go with names, at times you miss some people. But I have to recognize this morning our Associate Vice President for Academic Affairs, Dr. Linda Greensley, who is also a member of the Select Committee. She'll be making a presentation. Not here with us this morning, Ms. Laurie Burnett, Director of Business Services, and Dr. Levin McLaughlin, our Director of our Library Services. She's here with us this morning. Steve Grant, our HR Director, I think he will be joining us for a presentation this morning. But those are key members of the Select Committee, and of course, our Director, our Vice President for Fiscal Affairs, Mr. Larry Whitfield, is also involved with the Select Committee. And our honorable staff from Internal Audit, Zainab Latif.
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah, so she will be also making a presentation, but she's been working very hard to put this together and coordinate all this. So thank you so much for what you've done and continue to do on behalf of Albany State and the University System of Georgia. We're going to start this presentation, and we're going to follow the order in which you are sitting for convenience. So I'll call on Major Hill to make a presentation. And the key note here is the spirit. And spirit representing, like I said, stewardship, prevention, integrity, responsibility, inspiration, and trust. And all we're doing right here is awareness about prevention, trying to be good stewards of the resources we've been given as employees, as students of the University System of Georgia, because we've been trusted to do so much on behalf of the university. And like I always tell people, one of the key issues we don't always address is if you don't know and you do it, it doesn't excuse you. So you need to know. So key aspect is awareness leads to prevention. So all this what we're doing is to educate you more on the things we need to do, the things we're not doing right, but as we know them, we continue to work on them and do them right. So without wasting your time, Major Hill.
Again, I just want to welcome everybody to this event, and thank you all so much for coming out. As everybody knows, as the police department, by the time it reaches our hands, the situation has already been compromised to some extent, right? By the time we hear about it, something has gone wrong with the situation, and it's questionable. So we're not going to concentrate so much on the obvious this morning, but some of the things that we deal with on a daily basis when we're dealing with faculty, staff, students, and even visitors. And you may be able to just, if you've seen some of the things that I'll mention or that any of us have mentioned this morning, you'll be able to pinpoint it and say, that was a red flag. Maybe I should pay more attention to that. So we won't concentrate on so much as the obvious, because everything we deal with is a question of integrity for the most part. So we'll start off this morning with some true or false questions. The first one is from a law enforcement perspective, fraud always involves face-to-face encounters. False. Okay, that's obvious. Everybody knows. False. Fraud can occur over the phone, over the internet, as well as face-to-face. There's so many different areas that we deal with in society today that represent fraudulent situations. So it not only occurs in face-to-face encounters, but from other avenues as well. Number two, fraud always involves theft of physical and tangible items. Anybody say true? Somebody said true? It always has to involve something tangible? No? Okay. You're right. It's false. Fraud can include items such as identity, false reporting, and access to areas that one would normally be privileged to without the proper credentials. So that's a level of fraud as well. Number three, university communities are one of the least likely environments to be targeted by predators. False. Students, college communities, and senior citizens are more vulnerable to predators than any of the other groups in society. And why is that? Basically because they are new to the game, they don't have the right mindset, or basically because it's such a vast community that people target these areas because there's so many opportunities. It's an area of opportunity. So those are just some things that we want to go over as far as just some obvious situations. Some of the least obvious or some of the less obvious situations that we deal with on a daily basis, you may not even think about. Matter of fact, you may have been involved in and just didn't think anything was wrong with it. Like Dr. Patani said a few minutes ago, ignorance of the law is not an excuse for doing wrong. So you just have to be aware of these things. One of the situations is reporting ID cards, cell phones, and other items as stolen when they are really lost in order to avoid replacement costs for insurance purposes. Anybody ever thought about that? Anybody know situations that happen? Well, the only way that they'll replace my cell phone is if I reported it was stolen. Or the only way that they'll replace my ID card is if I say it was stolen. Not that I left it in my pocket when I went to the laundry and it just fell out. Because you want to avoid those replacement costs. Things such as that's so small, it's so minute, but still it compromises the integrity of our environment as a university. So that's just something to think about. Coming back to campus and reporting that an accident or damage to your vehicle happened on campus or as a hit and run instead in order to avoid premium increases. Anybody ever heard of that? Well, I really don't know where I got this dent in the side of my door, but it had to happen on campus because that's where I'm parked at most of the time. So I just go over here to campus police. It's convenient, and they'll do me a report, and I'll avoid all costs because it looks like a hit and run. Does it happen? We deal with it on a regular basis, so it's just something to think about. Another one, allowing someone to utilize an ID or a card for entry into events such as games, concerts, etc. without paying. Oh, girl, just use my card. I work at a university. I get in free. They're not gonna pay attention to the photo ID. Just go on in. Anybody ever been involved in that? Don't raise your hands. Or anybody ever have known that to happen? It happens. We deal with it on a regular basis. We deal with it with our students. It happens. So just something to think about. Red flags. Speaking or signing as a witness to incidents for friends, co-workers, associates, etc., without actually having knowledge of what occurred. Can you just witness this little sheet right here for me? Can you just sign right here for me as a witness? Oh, sure. Without even reading. You have no knowledge of what you're signing. But we do it. Just something to think about. So how do we prevent these occurrences? By developing a strong working partnership with law enforcement and our campus community, we can work more knowledgeably and effectively toward an ethical and integral environment. This relationship may also give us as law enforcement a sense of commitment and confidence about dealing with our campus community, the people that we serve, and it gives us a sense of commitment in that we are more likely to serve you on a greater level. We're gonna do our best, and we're gonna give you 100%. But when we have that relationship, that gives us more knowledge, and we can work more effectively together. Okay. After all, it's all about the spirit of USG: stewardship, prevention, integrity, responsibility, inspiration, and trust. Thank you.
Director for Information Services, Dale Kimbrough.
Can everybody see that? My name is Dale Kimbrough. I'm the interim vice president of IT here at ASU. And so what we're going to cover this morning is just a few things on ways that you can protect yourself and make sure that you're protecting the institution. One of the things that is out there for the institutions, all institutions, is an ITS handbook for the Board of Regents. The Board of Regents has a handbook out there that covers a whole bunch of different areas in terms of data and how we were supposed to protect it and what our duties are supposed to be as well, not just from an IT perspective, but from a campus perspective. So I wanted to I just highlighted a couple of quick things on here from section 5.12 in terms of importance of passwords. I think a lot of us, or folks on campus, have shared passwords. So I wanted to make sure I at least address that for sure this morning, because we're not supposed to be doing that whatsoever. So one of the reasons is that violations that could result in a serious security incident involving sensitive data or federal data. The purpose of this is you may have access to do certain things, but that doesn't mean that others have access to do certain things. So we have to make sure that folks who are sitting in front of a system has the appropriate credentials, but along with the fact of having the appropriate training to be able to make sure they understand what they're editing and what they're doing, because otherwise it can cause some major issues here for us on campus. Violators of that can be subject to disciplinary actions, including termination and/or criminal prosecution. A couple of things that we're addressing in terms of this policy says standards is, I've got a lot of words on here. I'm not going to sit here and read all that to you, but I want to make sure that we have this available to you for later so you can come back and reference these. But biggest thing is we have situations on campus where we allow our administrative assistants to give them our username and password to either update our information in ADP or PeopleSoft or Banner or whatever. That's not right. We don't need to be doing those things. So if you are doing those things, come talk to us and let's figure out how we can make sure that the other individuals have the access to do what you need them to do. So that's where we need to make sure that we have this open communication, because it's not right, but come back to us and let's make sure we figure out how to do it correctly. Another thing too, in the past, I think our departments even asked for your password. Nobody on campus should know what your password is. So if a supervisor is asking you what your password is, you're fixing to be gone for a week, that sort of thing, you don't need to be sharing your password with anybody. Again, come back to us, we'll figure out a way to make sure they have the information so they can do the same job duties that needs to be done in your absence. And the last part there, the last bullet, there's the link to the handbook. A couple of password tips. Use passphrases. You know, the criminals have all sorts of tools at their disposal now. So in terms of password hacking, I mean, they can run a little script on your machine easy enough, find out what your passwords are. But if you use passphrases, like the example here, Albany State, I'm swapping out the A's for the @ symbol and using capitals for the state part there, and then a number 3 at the end. That way I've got them all in there, and it's a passphrase. I can remember Albany State's my password. So I encourage you to start trying to think of passwords in that respect. But also be careful with your passwords. Don't use the same password for multiple applications. I do that too on the personal side, but it's still not a benefit to me even on the personal side. We don't need to do it that way here on campus, but you certainly don't need to do it even on your personal accounts, whether you've got email or, Facebook and all these different applications. Once they get one password, then they'll have your passwords to all the other accounts as well. I think most of you lock your keys or lock your doors whenever you get out of the car, or certainly you lock your house when you leave. The same holds true for on campus. You need to make sure you're locking your desktop before you walk away. It's so easy to say, I'm just going to walk right here next door and I'm going to be right back. But then next thing you know, you get a call or somebody meets you and now you're gone and your desktop's open. Who knows who you can trust here in terms of somebody coming in and saying, well, I don't really care for Dale. He's got his desktop open here. I'm going to send Dr. Dunning a quick little email and just let Dr. Dunning know what I really think about him. And it's going to look like it came directly from me at that point, and I can't do anything but say, hey, I screwed up all the way around. That was not me, but, So locking your desktop is real quick. There's a Windows key on your keyboard, and there's an L key. If you'll do Windows L, do them at the same time, Windows and then L, it'll lock your desktop. You don't have to do a Control-Alt-Delete and then hit Enter, so it just takes a little time out of your schedule anyway to lock your email. There's a couple quick terms I wanted to go over. Spam, phishing, and whaling. I'm sure most of you have heard most of those. And the spam is nothing more than unsolicited email. So you've got to protect yourself even on those, because if you're actually out here signing up for different accounts and things, even though they're free 9 times out of 10 for a reason. They're either free because they're either installing some sort of malware on the backside of your computer so they can start tracking some of your shopping habits or maybe pick up user credentials. Hopefully they can get credit card information. You never know what they're actually getting. But at the same time, they're turning around and saying, we're going to share your email addresses with our affiliates. Their affiliates are the folks who want to pay money for 5,000 email accounts, active email accounts. So the next thing you know, you're just getting more and more spam coming into your email box. And that's for personal as well as here on campus. Phishing is a definition as well that turns around and they're doing similar to the spam, but they're sending you an email trying to get some information from you. They want to get you to click on a link again to either download some sort of application, or they want your username and password. So a phishing example here is one where somebody's trying to get you sort of concerned and say, there's some sort of level of urgency. I need to go ahead and click on this link, change my password, or give them my password and user account, because they're saying, like from Facebook, it says our system detected unusual copyright activities linked to your Facebook account. Please follow the link below and fill out the copyright law. Now you're thinking, they've got me on something. Let me go fill out this application. Well, next thing you know, they've got all your information as well. Whaling is the last little definition here, and it's the same type of thing for phishing, but it's really at a VP level or president level, CEO level. They're looking at trying to get some sort of major information from the company itself. Maybe they're trying to hit you from a tax fraud situation, who knows what. Social networking sites, be careful with the type of information you put out there, because you can get your identity stolen very simply just by having your high school name or the high school name where you graduated, as well as the year and your name. It's amazing what information somebody can track on you just by getting those simple things. Credit reports, you need to make sure you're checking those once a year. They're free. You can check it from Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. And 2015, and I'm about through. 2015, they have the capability, if you hadn't already done it, you can purchase the identity theft protection. And I guess it's all too late for that anyway, but I've got listing here of what's there. Getting down. Thank y'all.
Please welcome Dr. Linda Grimsley. She's our Associate Vice President for Academic Affairs. Thank you.
Thank you. Last week, Ms. Laster came to me in the hallway, and with her always present smile and her beautiful Southern accent, she said, "We'd like for somebody from Academic Affairs to speak on International Frog Awareness Week." And I'm sitting there going, wait a minute. Dr. O.J. McKindy is an economist. What would an economist be speaking about frogs for? And why is Albany State even interested in frogs? And then I thought, well, maybe she knows about me when I was about 4 years old. I used to catch little green tree frogs and go up to my daddy and say, I got a present for you. And he'd hold his hand out, I'd drop that frog in. He did not like frogs. And I'd sit there and laugh while he jumped around trying to shake the frog off. And of course, y'all, if you've ever picked up a little tree frog, their little paws sound like little suction cups on your hand. They don't come off. And then I tuned back in and heard her saying, you know, people being dishonest. And I realized she was saying fraud and not frog. So we're not here to do International Frog Awareness Week. Okay. Let's see if we can do this. Okay, so we're going to try to create a more ethical culture and look at academic integrity this morning. First, your definition. Academic integrity is a code of ethical policy. For those in the university system of Georgia, the code includes values such as integrity, excellence, accountability, and respect. Who's affected by this? Well, the Board of Regents has all Board of Regents members, everyone who is employed by Albany State, and those affiliated with us, including some vendors, etc. A little bit about the history of academic integrity, because we're looking more at academic affairs versus what the Board of Regents members themselves look at. In the 18th century, the goal of academics was focused on status and appearance of being an upstanding citizen. At the end of the 19th century, the concept had changed somewhat. Faculty were required to not only teach, but also publish. So integrity changed from an individual focus to a focus of what's best for the university or the institution. And then to also encourage students to hold each other responsible and accountable for dishonest acts. By the 1970s, most institutions had codes of conduct, codes of honor for both faculty and students. But today, several factors have reshaped the idea of academic integrity. The most predominant right now is the technology. The fact that students can click on in a search engine any particular word, they can type it in, click it on, and get a lot of information from sources that often aren't cited, makes them a little unaware of how who owns the information really is. So they don't feel like they often have to cite it. And we as faculty may not require them to be accountable for where they get their information. Now, some reasons for ethical violations. One is deadlines. We tell them at the beginning of the semester, here's your syllabus, you've got a paper due the last week of the semester. You've got tests on these dates. And they have the dates, but they really don't pay attention to the dates. Most people take one of these little handheld PDAs out and put their dates in, think they're set up for it. Now, I'm a person that uses a hard calendar, and I still write mine down, so I know when I've got things due, and I look at it each week. But deadlines come upon us before we know it. Here it is, the end of the semester. How many of us have studied for our final exam? Or if we're faculty, how many of us have already prepared our final exam? Not many. So they arrive before we realize it. Productivity. We are competitive people. We want to get that A. We want to, if we're faculty or staff, we want to get that next promotion. So productivity is sometimes a problem for us. Collaborative and individual work. Students need to understand that collaborative work means they actually participate in the activity, not that they just put their name on the group of students doing a particular project and then they get there when the others are presenting and say, oh, I was on that team. Faculty also need to be sure that students understand when it's collaborative work, everybody works, or you don't get the grade that everybody else does. And you also need to tell them when it's not appropriate to do collaborative work, such as on an exam. Criticism. If we're not honest in our criticism of other people, they don't learn to trust us. When they're doing something wrong, we need to be honest with them about why we feel like it's wrong and what they should do differently. And we too often agree to something that we don't have time for. If you think back when you were 2 years old, the first word you learned to clearly say was no. And then we simply forget how to say it again. If you don't want to be too harsh to somebody and say, no, I can't do that, instead say, I'm sorry, that sounds like an exciting thing to do, but I've reached my plimsoll line. before they have time to ask you what a Plimsoll line is. Processes and products. Be sure that we're looking at what we've got to do is turning out to be the best in what we want to do. And I've got to move these a little bit quicker now. Lack of information. We have a new skill that we have to learn to be able to do our project, and it takes too long to do it, so we either put it off or we just don't do it. Violations. In non-professional relationships, in other words, faculty shouldn't be doing things with students that faculty shouldn't be doing with students. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Students shouldn't be bringing gifts to faculty to earn a grade. It should be an honest thing. Students have codes of conduct, as do faculty. They have the honor code. They have to be responsible to the student judicial governance. And harassment's a problem. Harassment's a competitive thing that happens. Those are violations of academic ethics. Plagiarism and cheating. The difference is plagiarism is taking someone else's work as your own. Cheating is, there's lots of ways to do it now from the time when we used to do, if it's a true question, we hold up the finger without the thumb. If it's a false question, we hold up the finger with the thumb up, so we know that's true, that's false, 4 or 5, true, false. Nowadays, it's electronic messages to each other, or it's other types of ways of getting information, whether we bring in our notes on our impeding fair and equal access to other students, taking resources that they might need and misplacing them in the library so they can't find them real quick. So we have an advantage over them. What are we responsible for? Academic administrators are responsible for fostering and maintaining the culture of the institution, including academic ethics and integrity. Faculty members need to model the behavior for students and also educate students about the qualities and behaviors and being sure they're compliant with it. And students have to become educated about the standards of ethics and behavior in the academic community.
So, especially I have vacation on the book, so I'm going to let them use sick leave. Sick leave should be used for you and your immediate family, or it can be extended to a family member, your mother, father, sister, brother, if you're going into FMLA. But there's a difference between sick leave and vacation. Vacation is where you're going to be compensated for it if you leave here, and you can roll that over to the institution, but sick leave, you cannot do that. But we have people that try and attempt to do that, and again, that too is fraud. We have medical situations. Some of us know people that are physicians, and they can talk to a physician, have them to write you a letter saying, okay, Steve Grant has plantar fasciitis and he should be out for so many days, but I don't have that. And you have physicians that do that. We follow up on stuff such as that. We've had situations where we called and the doctor's office said, no, I haven't seen this young man, or I haven't seen that lady. But that in itself is fraud as well too. Employees coming in attempting to claim dependents. Prior to recently, we had a situation where we had an organization come in to look at our dependents, and they did a check of all of our dependents. Once we screened that, and they had to bring in verification. This is my child. Here's the birth certificate for my child. This person is deceased. Here's the death certificate. This person is married to me. We had people to bring in credentials to support that prior to us changing over. And when we did that, there were some people that we see walking around here every day, and you think Steve Grant's married to Jackie Grant, but there's no marriage license. And some of the people had the same name. But there are times when employees will put a dependent on their open enrollment or try to put them out there, and they can't do that. And because the system will not accept that. But prior to that, they could not enter that information in there. And so we can't do those things as well. But when we do have fraud, I start working with all the people from the major all the way down to Lateef. Once they find something, they turn it over to me, and we have an obligation to Albany State University and you as a taxpayer that we must take an action. Because they've covered the different things we talked about, from allowing someone to use your password to get into your system, from somebody passing their ID over to a student. Dr. Grimley touched on the fact that Professors might be touching students where they're not supposed to touch them as far as integrity is concerned. Dr. Smiley touched on the fact that you've got people that might not use the credit card properly. And Lateef covered all those internal and external things that we have to do, the controls that we have. In my office, my employees cannot pay a person and create a person. I have to have a different person to do that because of the fact that they can make up ghost employees. So fraud is alive and well. That's the reason I was late today closing out a case. And these things should not be happening on our campus because we must adhere to the spirit that we talk about. The spirit of the USG, that we have stewardship, prevention, integrity, responsibility, inspiration, and trust. And all of that falls on each and every one of you. And when we do those things, we can ensure that Albany State University will continue to be the unsinkable Albany State University because we are taking care of what we're supposed to take care of. Our students, our employees, and us as employees.
So we're going to allow questions, and if not, we're going to allow questions. If there are questions, you have to step up front here.
Compensate for that once you depart the institution. But if you remain at the institution and you retire, that sick leave does count towards retirement time that you have with the institution.
Good morning, everybody. I don't know, did anybody speak on the process of whistleblowing and when we observe fraudulent malfeasance in our, as a citizen of Albany State University, if we ourselves see things, the procedures that we should follow for us bringing forth things to whatever body we're supposed to bring it to? Whistleblowing.
With whistleblowing, we all have an obligation. It's pretty much like the brochure here says that we have an obligation to Albany State University to let someone know what's actually taking place. For example, if I know of someone in my office that's creating a ghost employee, I would bring that to the attention of Mr. Wakefield. And once I address it with Mr. Wakefield, we'll take the appropriate actions. And also the police could very well get involved in that because you're talking about the stealings of funds of Albany State University. And also we have the ethics hotline where you can go out there and report something and you do not have to identify who you are, but the information can be brought, and depending on where it falls, if it was something pertaining to payroll or HR, it will come to me. We have a triage committee where it comes into the institution. It'll come into internal audits with Lateef and Catherine. Once they get that, they will disperse it out to the 3 people that are on the triage team, and once they know what area it falls into, for example, if it's something dealing with academic affairs, Ms. Tucker, Ms. Lasser, they could kick it over to Dr. McKenzie or Dr. Grimsley. If it has something to do with personnel, stealing of funds from HR or within the HR department, it would be kicked to me. Catherine and her group would come do an investigation within my area. But we do have a triage group that does cover that, and it's given to the appropriate person where that needs to go. If it has something to do with academic affairs, again, like I said, Dr. OJ, they would get that over there. If it's something within your office, financial aid, your boss would be contacted on that. That would probably be Dr. Wilson, and we would go through the process of trying to identify what we need to do.
I was saying that I was looking at it from the standpoint of the protections that are provided from any of us that observe and see things, and we bring those things forward.
Now, when you say protection, are you talking about protection against you where that could be some type of retaliation for you reporting that?
Correct.
Okay, we do provide that security and that protection for you. If in fact you feel as though there's a threat, we normally work with Chief Fields and the ASU Police Department to let them know that, okay, Mr. Harris has reported that he saw someone in this department doing something inappropriate, malfeasance or anything that's out of the norm. And we make note of that, and they do security walkthroughs and things of that nature, but we do notify the appropriate authorities, and there will be no retaliation to you for reporting that, unless it is found out to be false and you had a personal vendetta against the individual that you reported that on, and there was a bad claim, we could take action against you then. But other than that, we do work with the police department when we have situations like that.
And of course, I would like to know, because we don't have our full house, if we're going to continue this so everybody can be abreast to these things that you all have brought forth. Because there are a lot of individuals who are here, who have been here, that are more like homesteaders here. And sometimes people do things wrong for so long, they think they're right. You know what I'm saying? And if the information, or if individuals can be educated again, it's just like education, which we all are a part of, that if they can continue to have that information, then they can see where they're wrong at. Because sometimes people are doing things wrong and they don't know. Because they've been doing it so long, they believe that they're right. So do you think that we can continue this? Hopefully it's going to be serious.
Yes, we should be having annually this fraud awareness conference that we had, and this has been a whole week event, so this definitely will be going forward every year. In our department, if there's a department or an area that needs internal control training or some kind of training that our office can provide, just email Ms. Laster and we see can we get you on a schedule. But that may be helpful.
As well as D2L ethics training takes place annually, and a lot of people have not been doing that. But I know, being a part of fiscal affairs, I work closely with Dr. Smiley, where they do hands-on training for the P card at your beckoning call. They're there for you, and they work with people on that. And I agree with you where you say sometimes people have been doing that for a while, but I think they forget that when you first start with the institution, and I've been here for 15, 20 years, I signed something saying, I will not utilize the American Express card for purchases, for personal purchases. And it's been so long since they've done that. But if they go through the D2L training, they have scenarios out there where people are going through and telling you what not to do. And if they take the training, that's there and readily available. And this is something that the USG and John Fuchco has put out and said we will do this annually. So this will be ongoing, like Lateef says. And the D2L training, we all should be doing that. And that information went out during this week right here, so we can make sure that we're where we need to be with the training as well.
And of course, business service officer training continues throughout the year. So when you have training trail, we discuss all the policies and regulations and remind everyone. And also, as your card is renewed and you come and pick it up, we go back over again the policies that you have signed, making a statement that you agreed to. So, like, we're available anytime anybody want to know any information. When you're completing reports, if you have a question, you can contact us. We will help you. We'll let you know that, no, you can't claim that. That's in your agenda. That's why we ask for documentation. No, you can't claim mileage because we have a document saying that a van was rented from the fleet or a car was taken from the fleet. So you can't pad your expense report. You can't claim a meal that you're not supposed to have. Everything is traceable. All of it winds up coming together. We may not know it exactly at the time you do it, but eventually everything is going to flow through, especially my area. It's going to flow through because we're going to pay enterprise. You know what I'm saying? Mr. Jefferson is going to charge for use of the fleet vehicle. So all of that is going to flow together eventually.
And also, Dr. Patani mentioned a few minutes ago that there's a difference. This whole week has been targeting fraud. And he mentioned a few minutes ago 3 terms. There's a difference in fraud, misuse, and abuse. Fraud, which is what we're focusing on, is something that's intentional. But I think you're speaking more of the misuse or the abuse side of it. So there is a difference. So the fraudulent part of it, I think people actually know because they're using those funds or doing something intentional for their own personal use. So
I know we have a lot of cases in the dorms where people are cohabitating, and that's part of fraud, obviously. When can y'all, I guess, get with the housing staff to let them know that that's a serious issue, because a lot of our cases come from people cohabitating in the dorms?
We would probably need to meet with Ms. Porter, and with ASU Police Department being under fiscal affairs, that will be something we need to get with Mr. Wakefield And once we do that, I think we should work with student affairs to let student affairs to communicate back to the students that this is not the local Yoko Motel Hotel Holiday Inn. You need to, because you've got people that are living in there, whether you're living in, what do you call it, a quad, where 4 or an area, you don't want their booth staying in there with that. And that does create some problems for us, but I think Ms. Porter would be able to answer that better. And we could get with she and Mr. Wakefield to ensure that we put something out there, because I know that with the policy committee, we're coming up with some different things we're gonna be doing in the housing areas, because they have such things as comfort pets now, where some people might have to have an iguana that's gonna be their comfort pet, and I might not want an iguana in my room, but the medical has said that's what they get. So we're changing that policy on that, and that might be something we share with, maybe Major, you can get with the chief and we can do something on that.
I have a question concerning the American Express card, and it's been stated that the American Express card is exclusively for ASU usage. But when you go to, you can only qualify for one. The qualifications to hold one is based upon your personal credit. And it's a little bit like if a person does, if a person, I mean, we know that you're not, and I'm not a holder, but you know that you're only supposed to do Albany State business on the American Express card. So why is it necessary to take that individual's credit application to qualify for the card, as opposed to how the gas cards are? They're not an individual, just solely an individual's card. It's kind of like the card comes from, it's an Albany State card, and you can only use it for Albany State gas. And the fact that it's done like that, can you actually prosecute a person if they use that American Express, and if they're willing to pay for the purchase that they've made that was not university related, but it is your card, and your credit information is on the line?
Yes, credit, our understanding is that credit is checked, but sometimes because it is coming through the Albany State University program, sometimes people are eligible to get a card, even though the credit may not be where in the private sector it would have to be. But because you signed the agreement that you will only use that card for official travel purposes, you're signing that, you take an oath to that statement, it's the violation of that policy. You follow what I'm saying? Once you make personal purchases, you have just violated what you signed and swore not to do. So that's why there's consequences to it. So the card is for official travel purposes only. It's stated that several times, and we try to make sure the card holder, when they're receiving that card, understand that. So there are, that's the rule. That's the state travel guidelines, and that's what we have to follow.
And,
Thank you.
and not only does it go by the state travel guideline, but the University System of Georgia has established a guideline for it as well, 4.10.3 specifically, that says that you cannot use the American Express card for personal use. Now, there's no liability against the institution. We will not take a loss on the card because it's in your name. But prior to you getting that card, there are 3 statements that business services require you to sign and complete. There's one from the state card holder agreement, as well as 2 internal that we have with Albany State University. All 3 of those are signed by the individuals when they get that card, and they know that it says on there it cannot be used for personal use. And like Dr. Smiley says, some people can't qualify for that card, but because of Albany State and the budget that we have, they will allow you to get that card. Your credit score might not be where you could get it without Albany State, so you could not have it without Albany State. And when you violate that, there will be disciplinary actions up to and including termination, because you have violated the policy that you have failed to adhere to. And the difference between that and the gas card, if we misuse the gas card, that is actually taking money from the institution, because at that point, Albany State, you lose its X amount of dollars. With the American Express card, we're not going to lose any money, but you could not have gotten that card in some cases without Albany State's backing, if you will. And also, you signed 3 different statements saying that, and you will have violated 4.10.3.
If we are paying the individual money, then if they don't pay the American Express card, we are losing money. Because we are paying them for meals that they may really have not eaten, but they're still getting meals.
And at that point, that's in the fine print on that also, it says that legal actions can be taken against you as well.
Yes.
So as far as against Albany State's credit, it's not going to go against our credit or anything, but it could jeopardize all of us sitting in this room who has an opportunity to get the card, and we cannot get the card because one Joe has messed it up for everybody.
So it messes with our program then.
It messes with the program.
Okay.
But as far as us losing money, it becomes where we take criminal charges against that institution, that individual, for actually utilizing the card and not paying his or her bill. Okay. And they are penalized by American Express for finance charges as well as a late charge.
Okay.
Thank you so much. But the issue about the American Express, it's a lot of vast issue. We have short time to address it. But what I can tell you is, before you sign for any card, read the instructions, read the fine print. And if you have any problem with it, then don't sign up. But when you sign to accept it, you follow the rules and the regulations. The rules and regulations is not institutional, it's not Albany State, they are university-wide. Most of these rules, they are sent from the Board of Regents to cover all the schools in Georgia. So it's not rules made by business services or Albany State. They are made university-wide. At times we might question those rules, but because we accept them. When we sign, we accept them and we must abide by them. It's not all rules we agree with, but as part of an institution, it's a legal institution. We have rules. That's one of the things when you work for yourself, you work for the state of Georgia. We have rules passed by the legislatures. They come together, pass these rules, and part of our duty as custodians is to follow those rules as strictly as we could. But I want to thank everybody for coming. I wish we have more time to interact, but thank you so much. And please, let's give our panelists a hand of applause for doing a great job. Thank you so much, and we hope to see you all in some other event.